So I think first and foremost, we'll start by actually understanding what are pelagic birds. So the word pelagic in ancient Greek actually means open seas. It comes from the word pelagos, or like I've just written over there. And what are pelagic birds? So these are birds associated so closely with the sea that they spend almost entire their life in the sea. They hardly ever land. They just probably come on the land to breed, and just a few times. So they are like majorly all their life is spent over the oceans. So they are also called as oceanic birds, seabirds, or marine birds. Different names for the same kind of birds. Okay. So what we will do is we'll look at the characteristics of these seabirds and try to understand how they are different and they're made differently from the birds that we get on the mainland. Okay. Now, can you look at these images? This is a buller's albatross. And on the left hand side, you can see the underwing, and the right hand side, you can see the upper wing. And the first thing that comes to your mind is the coloration over here, the difference in the shades. The upper wing is actually really dark and the underwing is light. Now, this kind of strategy is seen in a lot of seabirds, and that is exactly what is called as counter shading. Now, why they do that is because of this. So most of them are of drab colors, and the counter shading helps them in camouflage. They actually don't have much of aerial predators, but what it does, it helps them to hide from the potential prey that they're going to catch from beneath. These images are by Saurabh Sawan. I think these are from Australia. So I've given credits for the images that I've taken. All other images I've taken from Google, and they are all being labeled for reuse. Now look at this wedge-tailed shearwater. And the first thing that you will observe over here, look how agile it is. It can fly so close to the water. And look at these long, long wings. So these are the few things, the way they are made. And that is why they can be in the air for so long and so many hours. So they are actually very similar to what we get on the mainland, what we call as swifts. So we have alpine swifts and common swifts who can stay in the air for so long time. In fact, the common swift can be in the air for almost 10 months altogether without landing at all. So the seabirds are made in a similar way. They have these long wings, and they can just keep soaring over the sea for a long time. Another thing to observe over here, on the left hand side is an albatross, right hand side is in Barrois petrel. And the first thing you can observe is these little structures on their beak. These are salt glands, and all these birds that have these salt glands are called tube-nosed birds. So these salt glands are special. So they are used to extract any kind of excess salt in the body. So that allows them to drink even seawater and even the prey which they eat, which has a lot of salt content. And you'll be surprised to know what they excrete from these glands is actually almost pure sodium chloride. It's pure salt what they excrete from these glands. And that is one reason they can be over the ocean for so long. So these are these special glands that these birds have. Another important thing about all these birds, which are called tube-nosed, who have these glands, is all these tube-nosed birds have some kind of musty odor to their body. And there is a theory that they get this odor from something called stomach oil. So since we all are birders, we know that the flamingos and the pigeons that we found on the mainland do produce something called crop milk, which they use to feed their chicks. This is something similar that the seabirds produce. They use it to feed their chicks as well as they use it for themselves. It's like food reserves. They can create this stomach milk from a digested food that they have, and which is something very amazing. And this allows them to really be in the air and keep flying over the seas for so long, continuously. Some other features that they have is their feathers. They have normally more feathers, which allows them in waterproofing, insulation, and buoyancy. Then the feet, most of them have very flexible web feet. Some of them have slightly some powerful claws on their feet, which helps them in catching fish. Another thing to notice is the head and the bill shape. So a lot of these birds plunge dive into the sea for their prey, and the way they are made, it helps their body. The impact that they get when they hit the sea becomes quite low because of the design. Also, if we see at the bill shape, most of it is called as hooked bill, and that is just to not let the prey, which is mostly fish at times, to slip. Oh yeah. So now one more unique quality that they have is they have the ability to sleep in flight. So we are familiar with waders and seabird. Now we're talking about seabirds, and a lot of these birds migrate a lot, huge distances, and they fly continuously for days altogether without any kind of sleep. So how do they manage that? So we already know that they have the ability to uh, sleep in a very different way. So they can shut off half the one side of their cerebral brain and continue, and the other half is active. So that is what mostly happens. But when it comes to seabirds, especially I'm talking about the seabird called frigate bird, and what it does is when it's in thermals, it can actually shut off its brain completely and sleep for a while. So they take something kind of power naps. So say during the day, when it is flying, it doesn't sleep much, but in the night when it is still in the air flying, it does take this power naps, and this power naps like cumulatively must be lasting for say 42 minutes in the span of 24 hours. But the birds, when they land on some small islands that they do, they make up for their lack of sleep. So on the land, they'll sleep continuously for say 12 hours. But in the air, they'll just take some little power naps, and that just boosts their ability to be in the air for long. And it is important for a bird like frigate bird to actually do that, because it doesn't have the ability to actually land on water. Like if you see some gulls, you see some shearwater skuas, which they can actually land on the water, and can float. The frigate bird doesn't have the ability to do that. So it is very important for the frigate bird to use these power naps to, just restore the energy. These are some classic examples of pelagic birds. There are these albatrosses, frigate birds, petrel, shearwaters, tropic birds, fulmars. These are some classic examples of pelagic birds that we get in the world. So just take a look at this slide over here. On the left hand side is wandering albatross, and on the right hand side is royal albatross. These are huge birds, like really big. And the trivia over here is that the wandering albatross has the longest wingspan of any bird in the world, which is approximately comes close to 13 feet. Royal albatross comes close, but I think it is just pipped by a little margin by the wandering albatross. And these are huge birds. And look at the long wings over here. Another record over here is by the grey-headed albatross, which holds the record for the fastest level flight. And by level flight, I mean just flying just at one level continuously for some time.
Birding and seminar.
Birding and
seminar. Hello everyone.
Prathamesh, someone's mic is on, I guess. Yeah. In the bird species, there is this bird called the peregrine falcon, which is like the fastest bird in the world. So when it dives, like completely nose dives, it reaches speeds of say 320 kilometers an hour. But this particular albatross over here, by level flight, I mean it's just flying at the same level. And this flight is just not for some time where it gained this speed of 127 kilometers. The bird, which was recorded in the southern hemisphere, Antarctica, it was flying continuously for 8 hours at this average speed. 8 hours it was flying at the speed of 127 kilometers per hour, which is like phenomenal. So now just let's take a look at what actually is pelagic and what is near pelagic, and let's get rid of this confusion between seabirds and pelagic birds. So there can actually be a disagreement on what a bird, what qualities and what characteristics makes a bird truly pelagic. So there are some birds which are heavily associated with the coastal region, but they lack all these characteristics that we discussed together. All these are not there together. Just for example, we take of the coastal species that we regularly see in and around Mumbai, say gulls, terns, skuas, skimmers, pelicans. There's some sea ducks and cormorants. Oh, so by cormorants over here, I'm not talking about little Indian and big cormorants that we find in India. Most of that we find is in estuaries and inlands. There are some cormorants that are found in North America, and there are some cormorants which are endemic, and these are very heavily associated with coastal habitats. So now for many birders, they have birds like boobies, penguins, puffins, auks, So there is confusion where to, if to put these birds in pelagic or to put these birds in near pelagic. So near pelagic, as we just discussed about these birds, the gulls and terns. So there is some disagreement among experts over where to exactly put these birds. But for convenience sake, right now we'll put all these birds together into seabirds. And if we just club them together, we get approximately around 350 species of seabirds in the world. That makes it around 3.5% of the species that we get in the world. In the world, we get close to around 10,000 species. So I just hope we are clear over here. So if we make a superset of all the seabirds of 350 species, the pelagic birds over here is a subset of that, and most of the other birds we will classify as near pelagic, not exactly truly pelagic. So let's take a look at the seabirds that are found in India that we consider as pelagic. Okay, so like rather completely as a superset of seabirds. So the first family comes is shearwaters and petrels. Second is storm petrels. There are frigate birds, tropic birds, boobies, gulls, terns, noddies, and skimmers, which all come in the same family of Laridae. And then there are skuas. So now there are some birds which are found in marine habitats around the world, but in India we don't associate with them as seabirds. So just take example of all these grebes. You get the black-necked grebe, crested grebe. You get pelicans like Dalmatian and rosy pelicans. So these birds are found near coastal areas, but we don't associate with them in India as true proper seabirds. We don't actually get them in the seas over here. They're normally there in inland ponds. There are also some ducks that we get, like I like to name the long-tailed duck. There is common golden eye. There is greatest cock. All these ducks are highly pelagic, but when we get to see them in India, they are passage migrants or just vagrants. Also, mostly we see them in the northeast region of India, and they're there just for a little while and then just scoot off to their breeding grounds. And as I said, I just spoke about the cormorant some time back. Even the great cormorant that we get in India, even though we get it as inland, in a lot other countries, it is there and closely associated with coastal habitats. So now let's take up these two birds, the red-necked phalarope and red phalarope. And we do get these birds. We have records of these birds in Mumbai and in around Mumbai, and they enjoy a very high pelagic lifestyle. In fact, they hunt very magnificently in small pools or even in oceans. Where they just go round and round with their legs and try to catch prey over there. So, but what we do is like we don't put them under seabirds or under the heading of seabirds. We are currently classifying them as waders. So this definition of what exactly is pelagic is probably evolving, and probably after a while we'll have something different, and we'll be able to list all of these birds together. So just take a look at this image of this is a flock of redneck phalarope, and just wanted to show you that it enjoys this space in the ocean. So now we'll look at some families that are found in India. We'll go family wise and take a look at some pigs. And these over here are wedge-tailed, streaked shearwaters. And you'll see they are in a flock. So that's what normally happens with shearwaters, and they are normally there in flocks. So if you go for some pelagic birding tour and you end up seeing a flock, it is very likely to be of shearwaters. Look at these birds again, Barhouse petrel and Audubon shearwater. So if you look at these birds, all these birds have that salt glands, and they are like they're those classic tube nose birds. And interesting thing over here is they use this even to navigate through the ocean. So there have been some experiments with shearwaters where scientists have taken groups of shearwaters and divided them into three sets. So one set was done nothing. The second set, they put a small magnetic box on their necks. And the third set, what the scientists did as they impaired their sense of smell just for a while. So they were taken from their nesting burrows and just they were released some 500 miles from there where the nesting spot was. And both the sets where which had the magnetic box and both the sets for which there was nothing done returned very quickly and safely to their nest. But these birds whose sense of smell had been impaired by some chemical, they were like astray and they were like roaming around for thousands of miles somewhere before they could reach their nesting ground again. So this just shows that they make a kind of a olfactory map of the ocean, and they use this to migrate, find a way in and around the ocean, which is very interesting. Take a look at these small birds. These are storm petrels. On the left hand side is the Wilson storm petrel, and the right hand side is white-faced storm petrel. Both these birds are very possible if you go for pelagic from the coast of India. And there's some little trivia over here about the Wilson storm petrel. It is one of the most abundant bird species that are found in the world. So, with abundant bird species, we have something that we get very easily in Mumbai, which is Passer domesticus, which is called a house sparrow. There's the bird called red-billed koala, which is found in Africa, which is considered to be one of the most abundant birds in the world. But Wilson storm petrels really come close. Another interesting thing about the storm petrel is these are small birds, and they fly very close to the water. And when they nest, what they do is their egg size, the egg, they normally lay only one egg, and the egg that they lay is huge. So the size of the egg compared to is like in proportion to the body, the egg is almost 29%. So that's like the highest I think we know in all bird species, because we always thought it was the kiwi, which has its egg size in proportion to body, say around 20%. These birds have this proportion right up to 29%. So that's something amazing for a small bird like storm petrels. They're quite small compared to all these bigger birds like shearwaters and skuas. Now take a look at these birds. These are frigate birds. I think there are chances that we get them in India, so they're quite possible. Look at these. The upper side on the left hand side is a great frigate bird. That's a male, and you can see the red thing that has been inflated. That's a pouch, and that's a special characteristics that they have. Right hand side is a flying individual. Same goes with the images below, which are lesser frigate bird. Left hand side is the male. Right hand side is a juvenile in flight. So now you'll see that this great frigate bird on the left top corner has actually inflated its red pouch, and that is a very interesting thing because these frigate birds, when they mate, they form something called leak formation. They have something called a leak formation, LEK, and what that means is a lot of males come together and they do display. In this case, what they do is like they inflate the red pouch on the throat, and they try to look as attractive as they can. So what the bird does actually, all the males sit on the nesting ground over there with inflated pouches over there. The females fly over them, and by looking at the attractiveness of the red pouch and the health of the bird, they choose their mate, and which is quite amazing display, kind of a courtship display. This is the white-tailed tropic bird, and we get 3 tropic birds in India, white-tailed, and there are 2 more, and we'll see images later. And this is what we you can see these long trail streamers, and the first bird that comes to land that we think of is the Asian paradise flycatcher. So these birds are the paradise flycatchers of the sea world, and they're remarkably beautiful. And the tail actually dangles really well, just like the tail of the paradise flycatcher. Look at this, the red-billed tropic bird on the top left, and this is the red-tailed tropic bird. And look how beautiful these birds are. and they have this nice aerial dancing and displays during the courtship period, and it's fun to watch. If you can find some YouTube videos on that, it'll be really good. The next family that comes is the boobies, the Sulidae. And I've chosen an image over here by Amol. And on the insert right corner is an image by Prathamesh. And you can see this is a red-footed booby. And you can see the red feet, and the red-footed booby actually does something that we called as a parading. It'll just stand up, kind of lifting his head up, and they just walk, showing off their red feet. Even the blue-footed boobies do that, and it's just one form of their courtship display. If you see this particular bird over here, you can see the feathers are ruffled, and it's not in great shape. And this bird had actually come for rescue, but it didn't make it. Sadly, it didn't make it. And I've put a date over here, which was found in the month of June 2016. So just when the southwest monsoon winds are coming and they're like the rains are approaching, a lot of these birds come in because of the storms, and they get stranded, they get pushed inland. And a lot of these records of mass boobies and redfoot boobies is actually quite rare compared to mass boobies, which are considerably commonly seen in India, or rather in Mumbai region. And you will see all these records around this time, June, August, where all these, they are driven inside because of the southwest monsoon winds. Oh, on the left hand side is the mass booby, and the right hand side is the brown booby. Both of them possible in India. Beautiful birds. The next family that we go to, gulls, terns, noddies, and skimmers. Over here, I'd like to say that we get 3 species of skimmers in the world. One is the African skimmer, then is a black skimmer, and what we get in India is called the Indian skimmer. So the Indian skimmer is actually much more associated with inland water bodies, where it skims in inland water bodies, and there are a lot of records in Chambal side from Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. But what has recently happened is I feel the bird is trying to adapt, and we have suddenly seen a few records in Akshi and even I think in Vasai region, where you see a lot of skimmers, and they are associated with flocks of lesser and greater crested terns, and it's probably just changing. So that's not actually the way we associate the Indian skimmer, but now it is being probably adapting to coastal habitat. Maybe coming years, and if we get more records, we'll have some more clarity on this. This particular image is of the lesser noddy. Again, you will see the feather that's a bit ruffled. It will come for rescue again. And the first thing that will strike, is the long, thin bill, So look how they're made differently, So even in the sea, when they are like surface feeding, they can penetrate different depths and, take their prey, So that there's not much skirmishes between them when on the feeding grounds. The bridal tern over here, and down below is the brown noddy. Another thing I would tell you all to observe over here, and look where the bridal tern is sitting on. It's plastic. This is what we are doing to the oceans around the world. It's a plastic bottle. Beautiful image by Mayuresh, and the brown noddy I got from Google Images. So just come at skuas over here. One at the top over here, which is the brown bird, is the brown skua, and the one below is the Pomeranian skua, also called as poms. Outside over India, they're normally called as poms. And if you look at this bird, Pomeranian skua over here, you can see a very long tail, and the tail forms like a spoon-like structure at the end of it. So that is one of the identification features of the bird. When the tail, elongated tail kind of forms a spoon-like structure, it is likely to be a Pomeranian skua. And something very similar that we get is the Arctic skua, or what we call as the parasitic Jaeger. So over here on the top left, the image is by Siddesh, and this flock down below is the image by Mayuresh. And down below you can see these 3 birds, and looking at them, you can actually see that the 3 birds are aged differently. Look at the plumages carefully over here, and they have aged slightly differently. And this aging is very intricate. If you all been following identification of gulls somewhere, or you're trying to identify gulls, you see that they'll have some of these different plumages which are juvenile, and first winter, second winter, and then it comes to third winter in some species, and then adult plumage. Same thing happens with these kuas. That is one of the reasons it is so difficult to identify these birds on the field. That even with photographs, it becomes very difficult. So it's very challenging. So now I would like you to take a look at some feeding techniques of these birds. And since they spend most of the time in the sea, their main prey is fish. They are piscivorous birds. They also feed in squids, crustaceans, plankton, little. And actually, they are very opportunistic. They'll feed on everything what they'll get. So they rely on different techniques, and they use really make effective use of their strong sense of smell. As I just said, in case of some tube nose birds over here, they use the sense of smell amazingly. So they also feed on offal from the ships and trash that is dumped into the ocean. Now, we'll just take a look at a few feeding techniques over here of different seabirds. And one technique that they do is plunge diving. Over here, you can see I've given some examples, which are the brown pelicans, the gannets, boobies, trophic birds. But actual plunge diving is done by these brown pelicans and gannets. And boobies, trophic birds in turns do some kind of plunge diving, but they are not as efficient as these gannets. I have a little video over here. What we'll do is we'll try to play this right now. Prathamesh, just let me know if you can see it once I click on this YouTube video. Okay. Can you see this video?
I can see the video, but it's lagging. But that's okay. At least we are able to see the moving picture.
Okay.
So yeah, we got an idea about the diving, plunge diving.
Okay. So this is what these gannets are made for. What they do is amazingly they plunge dive, and the body is made that way. They're structured that way. So they have this effective eyesight. So when they are plunge diving, within seconds they can change their eyesight from seeing on the land to seeing on the water. That's like just happens in a jiffy, and because of that, they are able to catch these shoals of fish that they actually attack. Another thing that you must have probably observed in the video is like there were too many birds together. So and you could hear a lot of ruckus. So what they do is like they actually call before they plunge dive, and because of that, they make sure that they don't hit each other. So one bird calls and it just dives. They make sure that it's not hitting any other bird which is nearby. Another thing that happen that is the way they are made is if you know that birds breathe slightly differently than what we do. We have lungs that expand and contract. They don't have that. They have lungs and then they have air sacs which expand and contract. So these air sacs that are there in the posterior region. So with gannets, there's a lot of these air sacs that are there in the chest region of the bird. So when it dives, the impact of the water is cushioned because of those air sacs in the chest. And another thing is it also helps them to control their buoyancy. So they normally jump from the feet of say some 30 meters, even as high as probably 50 meters. They jump down and they can even go down to 11 meters down. And if possible, they can even swim further downwards. So what they do is, if any of you have done scuba diving, you know that you have something called the air pressure over there, and because of which you can control your buoyancy. So this is the same technique that the gannets use to control their buoyancy, and probably this is what we as humans have learned from them, and the scuba techniques have been developed. Another thing that they do is pursuit diving, which is normally done by these shearwaters and cormorants. There's another video over here. I'll just play it for some brief time. It was good enough, Prathamesh?
Yeah, it was really good actually. This one played really well.
Okay. Yeah. So this is what we called as pursuit diving, where you just go down and just keep on following your prey, your fish, and that is one strategy that these shearwaters and cormorant. That is why they are very strong swimmers. They can really navigate well underwater. Another thing is scavenging. So that I guess a lot of birds take the use of this opportunity and they scavenge. So in the ocean, you might find a dead whale or any dead fish. All these birds like gulls, albatrosses, they're known to scavenge a lot more than other seabirds. Another technique is hovering and is used by terns and tropic birds. I have another video over here. This video by Mandar, and it was, I think, taken in Little Andamans. I'll again play that.
Yes, it's playing.
Okay. You can see the bird hovering right now?
Yes.
Okay. That's yeah. So that is another technique that is used for like hovering, and that's one of the techniques that they use here. Tropic birds use that a lot more than these other birds. Then obviously there is surface feeding, which again noddies and terns. We just had a look at the image of noddy, and that's how they pick up the prey from the surface of the seawater. And obviously there is predation. There are these gulls, skuas, and some pelicans, even albatrosses, which prey on nest of other seabirds. They even eat eggs, even chicks. That happens in the seabirds as well. Birding world. So now just take a look at this image. This is an Arctic skua, and on the right hand side is a bridal tern. So what this skua is actually doing is trying to follow the tern over here, or rather the idea is to dislodge the prey that is there in the beak of the tern and eat it. So you must have observed that a lot with gulls that they steal prey from all these other species. Skuas are even better than them. They steal food from even gulls, and that kind of thing is called kleptoparasitism, where they try to steal prey from other bird species, and you can say they are the pirates of the seaworld. So they'll just go and attack everyone, and for food they'll just that's their technique. That's how they feed. It's the easy way out. Let some other person do the hunting and just steal the food from them. Now look at this again. This is a Wilson storm petrel, and if you can look at the image over here, you can actually feel like that the bird is walking on the water. So if you look at the beak of the bird, it's a very small beak, and you can make out quickly that it is actually a surface feeder. It picks up small food items that are there found on the surface. They cannot penetrate their beak a lot deeper. And this thing of flying so close to the sea, the waves or the ocean, it's really fantastic. And this kind of technique where they feed is called pattering, where they almost like walk on the surface of the water. And if you are like go for some pelagic trip and you'll see this bird, and if you are lucky enough, you'll be able to see this pattering, and it's really wonderful to watch. This I'm sure most of you all will be familiar with. This is a skimming technique, or what we associate with the Indian skimmer in India. This is a black skimmer, not an Indian species. And there are some albatrosses who also use this kind of technique, where they just open their beak and skim through the seawater, and if they find any prey, the beak will just shut and catch it. This is a quite effective technique. Yeah, I think we're done with the feeding techniques. Now just take a look at the importance of all these seabirds. They are obviously an important link in this ecology over here. We can get to know the health of the marine ecosystem and how it is doing, if it is doing well or not, by just taking a look at the population of all these seabirds. Also, by studying their flyways, breeding habitats, and wintering grounds, we can actually decide on what areas to conserve. So there are these, in the olden days, what the fishermen used to do, they used to actually follow the seabirds. So wherever they used to see seabirds are going, that means there are some fish over there, and the fishermen used to really follow the seabirds and get their fish, get a good catch. I think the tables have turned slightly because nowadays all these pelagic birds are known to follow fishing trawlers. They're known to follow these fishing boats for hours and hours together because they know that these fishing trawlers will get a great catch, and that opportunity to get easy prey is it's the probability is a lot more. So the tables are turned now. The seabirds are making use of all these human activities. We'll take a look at the breeding. And the first thing that probably you all will notice that they all breed in remote areas, which are all these small islands right in the middle of the ocean, rather right in the middle of nowhere actually. So they also prefer all these windy areas which have got a lot of cliffs, and it helps them to really take off from that very easily. And most of these nesting colonies that you will find would be in remote areas, not actually not too close to the mainland. Secondly, that you will observe that all colony breeders, they breed together in huge numbers, and I actually have some images which I'll show later on. And it's a sight to behold. It's a beautiful sight with a lot of these birds coming together and breeding together. Now, there are some pros and cons when it comes to colony breeding. The obvious cons are like if something happens to that habitat or there's some epidemic that goes, entire population can be wiped out. But the advantages are a lot more. And the main advantage over here is passing of information. So they actually, as we know that they feed majorly on fish. 70% of Earth is water, and the fish keep on moving. They're continuously on the move. They don't stay at one place. So this information sharing is really important, especially during the breeding season where they have to feed chicks. They all come together, and they're just more number of eyes taking a look at the ocean floor. And one bird comes to know, okay, there's a nice shoal of fish or there's a school of fish over here, which we can go and feed on, or we can attack and just, take. All the birds suddenly in the colony come to know of it, and they go together and, they fish together. So this is one advantage that they have. And that's really important because food is everything after all. So if they're not able to feed, nothing matters. Another thing is site fidelity. So most of these seabirds will return to the same particular site to breed. Now, this depends on a lot of factors. So if the breeding has been very successful, they'll definitely come back on the same site. Even the chicks that grow and they become adult normally come back to the natal site from where they were to nest. So they have something called site fidelity. That is why it is very easy to study these seabirds on their breeding grounds because they all die together. They normally they're going to come back to the same place. But same when they go on their wintering grounds are very difficult to study because the wintering grounds are vast. One point over here is what we call as the clutch size. That is the number of eggs that are laid in the nest. This is very, very important because this actually defines the strategy to survive. So there are some gulls and terns that might lay 2 or 3 eggs, but most of these true pelagic birds, shearwaters, trosses, storm petrels, fulmars, petrels, all these birds just lay one egg, just one egg. Okay. So this kind of strategy in ecology, we call it K-selected strategy. Opposite of that, we have something called the R-selected strategy, where in our strategy, more importance is given to quantity than quality. Over here, importance is given to quality. So they just lay just one particular egg, and they will tend it and take care of the egg for long hours. And frigate birds, the birds take care of their siblings, of their offspring or chicks for 14 months. The 14 months the parents are catering to the chick until it's almost adult. So that is the strategy that they use, and they because of the strategies, since they are feeding their chicks for say 14 months or 8 months, 10 months, what they do is they don't breed that often. They don't breed probably every year. So what happens is they breed probably once in 2 years or once in 3 years, because they have to take care of these their chicks for quite a long time. Just for example, what we have with the tiger in India, once the female has cubs, she takes care of it for almost 2 years. Later, she mates again and has another set of cubs. So it's almost very similar, where the amount of quality, same with humans. We have to take care of kids for a long time, long time. So in land birds, you will not find such strategies. Very few birds have that. I think it is the southern ground hornbill which tends to stick for a long time. But in seabirds, the clutch size is important, and they just lay one egg and take care of it for a long time. Again, most of these seabirds are monogamous, so they come back to this. The pair is same. The male and female is the same most of the time. Again, there are a lot of factors for this. What happens is, if the male dies or the female dies, they do pair up with someone else. But what we have is they're mostly monogamous, and there is hardly any divorce or any pair splitting that happens. Is the splitting that happens because the male and the female don't actually time their arrival at the same time their arrival well at the breeding grounds. Say if the male comes early and the female doesn't show up for the next week or the next month, the male might feel the female has died and it might pair up. But otherwise, they usually wait. Another thing that I would like to again point out about the clutch size is it is very similar to what we have with the bustards over here. And the great Indian bustards that we know, laying just one egg, once in 2 years or 3 years. And because of that, it is difficult to conserve some species like bustard. And same might be the case if we don't take steps right now to conserve all these seabird species, because the clutch size is very small. Courtship displays. I think I just spoke about it sometime back, where I spoke about the courtship display of the red-footed booby, where it parades and shows off its red feet. Aerial displays by tropic birds. There are a lot of these kind of displays. Even boobies, there's a lot. So if you actually seen some seabird documentaries, that comes on Discovery and all those channels, you will definitely come across breeding displays of albatrosses, and it's really beautiful. They have these little kind of dancing. There's a lot of beak clapping, and there's something called sky calling, where they just face upwards, and calling it. All these small things are important for bonding between the pair. And obviously, we all are familiar with this thing of courtship feeding, where you must have seen all these terns and gulls, courtship feeding. The male is feeding the female to just woo her. So now I've added this point called something called same-sex pairing, which I found was very interesting in seabirds. So same-sex pairing happens in a lot of organisms in the world over here, right from insects to reptiles. A lot of organisms do something that we call same-sex pairing. But what is interesting in seabirds over here, that the same-sex pairing is happening is only between female and female. The pairing is only, so if it is not a male and female, the pair that you'll find will be female and a female. And another thing to observe over here is when a female and female pairs up, the clutch size that we just spoke of is normally supernormal. So if the normal clutch size of some bird is say 2 to 3 eggs, when it comes to same-sex pairing between female and female, the clutch size will increase suddenly from 4 to 6. Yeah, so this is probably because both the females might be laying their eggs in the same nest. That might be happening. We don't know as yet. Probably that is the case. But this is what happens. The clutch size is supernormal. And another interesting observation by scientists that they've made is, even if this clutch size is supernormal, that is, if there are more eggs in the nest, say 4 to 6 instead of 2 to 3, the success rate is really less. Success rate of a heterogeneous pair, the success rate of a male and female pair as opposed to a same-sex pairing between female and female. The male and female pairing has a better success rate, and which was very fascinating to know. Even I didn't know this when I was just researching about the topic. So just look at this albatross colony over here. These are Laysan albatross. This is a pic from a small island called Midway Atoll in the Pacific. And look at the numbers. It's mind-boggling. And it's like, get to see this, it'll be like really amazing. I put another pic, and these are northern gannets. And look at this. Look at the numbers, sheer numbers, come all together and breed together. It's really a sight to behold. It's really beautiful. Now to the part which we actually don't want it to happen. So these are threats to shorebirds and pelagic birds. These are this can really happen, and let's take a look at them in one by one and what the threats are. One is obviously habitat loss, which is human encroachment. If we encroach all these islands what they breed on, it is going to be a straight loss for the birds. Second is loss of food supply. With excessive fishing, all these trawlers and the amount of fishing and the amount of catch these shipping companies and all these fishing trawlers do, it's huge. It's obviously depleting the ocean of the resources, and the seabirds feed on these fish. So obviously loss of food supply is going to affect them in the near future. Another thing is hunting, but this is like absolutely reduced a lot. I don't think it happens at all, rather. It must be happening very remotely in some places. One then is the pollution, oil spills and trash dumping, and this is one of the biggest threats that the birds have right now. And we'll discuss about this point more in detail in the later slides. Then is disturbance. Like what the seabirds normally do is they make use of these ocean currents and oceanic winds, and the same is done by the ships. When we sail, for example, if we make use of those winds, and that is why most of the transport that happens, might happen in all these oceanic wind areas, and where a lot of ships are traveling in the same spot. That can cause some kind of disturbance, but this is not much of a worry considering we have a lot of ocean. Then obviously is predation, predators that they have, which are both natural. There are some fish like the giant trevally and all. They feed on these seabirds when they are sitting on the ocean floor over there, and they're suddenly attacked and they're eaten. A lot of fish do that. Another problem, all this feral population of that we might introduce on these breeding islands of, like we might introduce cats, some rodents, which is a very high possibility. And if they just go on these islands and they'll just start feeding on these eggs, and it will be a disaster. And obviously the last thing is the climate change, and that we all are suffering the brunt of that, and we all know what that is, and we all have to work together to. This is just an image of an oil spill that has happened. And look at this bird over here, which is completely soiled with oil. And that's a problem, Once that happens, the bird cannot fly, cannot do anything, and it eventually mostly dies unless there is someone who will, actually rescue it and get rid of the oil. But that is very, very difficult. Even in shores of Mumbai, or probably even when you're birding in Alibag or say, you might see some birds, which are soiled with oil, and they have a lot of difficulty in flying, and that's a problem. This is not a good scene. So we have, as we discussed, we have approximately 350 species of seabirds. These are some IUCN numbers that I could find. They're slightly old. I couldn't find anything latest as such, but these are numbers that are there. Around 28% of them are threatened, 10% of them are near threatened, and critically endangered of 5%. Nearly half of the 50% of these seabirds are experiencing population decline. The decline is, it's very obvious in some birds and not as obvious in others. But in spite of all this, there are some species which show an increase in numbers, and these are the gulls. They are like the crows of the sea world. How we have this crow population booming in our cities, that is what happens with the gulls. And that happens because obviously they can feed on almost anything. Their association with humans is so close that we often see people while going from Mumbai to Alibag or somewhere else, we often see people feeding girls with biscuits, with gatia, and that is very, very common. And because of that, the girls have still managed to have a good food supply. And some girls, the population has actually increased as compared to what has been the trend with seabirds. There is obviously more concern for species which are found in smaller range and in a small population. So just let's take example of some penguins which are there in one area. That habitat is hit, or there is some disaster that happens over there, and the whole population can go extinct. And obviously, they are more endangered, and they are facing more risk than these other seabirds. Now, the main problem that we thought of is plastic waste. Now, look at the amount of plastic that goes in the ocean every year. 8 million tons. That's like huge amount of plastic that goes in the ocean. And there are these estimates that by the end of 2050, which is not far, we're in 2020 now, it's 30 years, every seabird in the world would have consumed plastic. That's the statistics that we have. And it is really, really disturbing that that is going to happen. And we really need to do something about it as quickly as possible. Just not the birds, even the chicks of these birds are ingested by plastic, by birds. They feed these chicks actually plastic, and this results in a lot of these disorders like stunted growth, high cholesterol levels, lower dissolved calcium, and increase in uric acid. Now, this higher cholesterol levels and so like it is we have to really check if these higher cholesterol levels affect the seabirds the same way as it affect humans. There has to be more study on that. Even, but then obviously will be some problem with them. Even when it comes to dissolved calcium and this increase in uric acid. Now these lower dissolved calciums and uric acid are actually classic signs of impaired kidney function in humans. But we don't know if it affects the birds in exactly the same way. But it must be affecting them in some way for sure. But the stunted growth is actually a real problem. So what actually happens is the chicks have suddenly less body mass. They will have the length of their beaks, the size of their head is affected, the size of the wings is affected. And all these features are really, really important for seabirds. And if they don't grow properly, they will obviously not survive in a proper manner. Now just take a look at these pics, and these are very disturbing images, and look at the amount of plastic ingested by these albatross chicks. Look at that. It's really sad to look at this, but that's what the reality is. And these are actual images that have taken when from these breeding islands of chicks that have died, and this stomach and the gut is almost full of plastic, and all these plastic, some of it must be leaching some toxic chemicals, and it's obviously affecting the birds in a very bad way. So the question that comes to your mind is, why do seabirds eat plastic? It's not obviously not their natural prey. They feed on fish and all these other things on the ocean. Why do they eat plastic? Just take a look at it. The floating plastic picks up chemicals, something which we call as dimethyl sulfide, which is DMS. So it's a byproduct given off by algae and other microorganisms as they break down, usually when they are being eaten. The algae eaters are themselves seabird prey or attract other seabird prey, and so DMS serves as a dinner bell for many species of foraging seabirds. So just to understand this a little bit more, let's take an example of a krill or a shrimp. So if let's say a shrimp is feeding on some plankton on the ocean or in the ocean. And the moment that happens, the byproduct of DMS is goes off, and it is given out as a byproduct when this reaction, the thing is happening, the eating happening, and this DMS that the birds can really smell. We know that they use the sense of smell to search for prey, and they can just pick up this smell of DMS, and either they'll come and directly feed on the shrimp that is feeding on the plankton, or they'll feed on the fish that have come to eat the shrimps. So it's an indirect relation. It's not a direct relation. And the birds are not able to comprehend what exactly is prey. wherever on whatever thing that the DMS is there, it will just ingest it, and it is really sad. And as we have seen the images of these chicks, the birds don't eat it themselves; they even feed to the chicks, and this is a big problem. And it's like the future of these seabirds in complete jeopardy. But despite so many threats, pelagic birds are remarkably long-lived and they're prolific migrants. Let's take a look at this. The Laysan albatross named Wisdom is at least 69 years old and is the longest known living bird in the wild. Born in 1951, she was tagged in 1956, has raised 36 chicks so far, and has flown around 5 million kilometers since tag. So this tag was done on this, again, island of Midway Atoll, the breeding colony that we saw the image of. It is there in the Pacific, and the bird was tagged in as 1956. The bird is 2020 now. So the bird is at least 69 years old. We say at least 69 because when it comes to these albatross species, they don't start breeding till they've completed 5 years of their age. So it is an estimate that she might be born in 1951. That is why I'm using the word at least 69. She was tagged definitely in 1956. And interesting part is since 2010, this bird has a steady mate. And even that bird has been tagged. And the name of that male is Akia Kamiya. So it's a very funny name, but yeah, that's how that's the name of the male. Let's look at the migration of the Arctic tern, and it's a phenomenal migrant. It's like amazing, and it's a very strongly migratory bird. And it normally by the name it breeds near the Arctic region, and it is there are records of the bird doing round trips of 90,000 kilometers. That's the, I guess, highest we know so far, and these are. Studies of birds that were tagged, say, in Iceland or Netherlands, and this is data that we've got from them. Some birds migrate for, say, 60,000, 80,000 kilometers, and this particular bird migrated for 90,000 kilometers, like complete round trip, and it's amazing. I don't think we can imagine that. Oh, yeah. So identification challenge. Now let's come to the really tough part. And why that happened, obviously, is like you can probably identify these birds. We saw images a lot of birds like shearwaters, boobies, kuas, and you can see that obviously family-wise they look differently, but there are many similar species there. They're in the same family, and as I said, there's a lot of aging problem complex between them, whether it's juvenile, first winter, second winter, and it really complicates matters, and it's not easy to identify species. Secondly, it happens is secondly the thing that happens is the conditions. The conditions are obviously not good because you are on a boat when you want to see these birds. The boat is moving, the sea is choppy. There are waves, that block views of seabird because they are either landed on the water or they are flying so close, and it's really tough. Just imagining bird watching from a moving car, that too with the binoculars, you don't get good views, and that's a big problem. Another thing that is a problem is the observation time. The bird just comes and it just zooms past. You will get like few seconds of fleeting glances to your binoculars, and like the bird just goes off soon. And you in that little time that you have, you look at so many all these identification features, and it becomes a real challenge. And this actually we experienced when we did our first pelagic trip in 2013, and I think that's the only one I've done. Very limited experience even over there. So in 2013, we did a trip from Alibag, and all these things that when we got more and more into this identification, and we just realized, oh my God, this is going to be a big problem, and I don't know how we're going to manage. But we were planning this trip for quite a long time, and it materialized in October 2013. And for that to happen, people were very instrumental. One was Dr. Vaibhav Deshmukh from Alibag, and another was Siddesh from Pune. And it was a collaboration between Mumbai and Pune birders. And we did this trip, and this plotting over here, you can see we started from third Alibag. and we didn't go that deep because it was almost like a Reiki trip. We just wanted to do it, because from Mumbai we didn't have any record, doing these trips. Uh, it was really lovely when we did this, and this all these bird plotting was done by Sir Saurabh Sawant, and he was like clicking birds, using the binoculars, watching them and plotting them. Multitasking. He was doing all that for us, and we have this map thanks to him. This is a team that did the trip, and we were 11 of us, and I think someone just I think it was Adesh who called the team the Ocean's 11, over here, and it was really funny. This is the boat that we were on, and we went with a fishing boat. It didn't have a loo, it didn't have any shade, and from this little experience that we had, we learned a lot, and from that. We actually made some guidelines for future reference, for other people to follow. And I think I'll just present them now. So how to go about for pelagic birding? One is definitely choose the correct season. You obviously can't venture into the seas in the monsoon in India. It will be very risky. Don't do that. So you have to check the season. The best season would be just before the rains and just after the rains. So probably what will be productive will be May or October will be really, really good. And why I would suggest you go more in May, because the ocean currents are that way. When the southwest monsoon winds will start, the ocean currents also start that way. And with the ocean current comes a lot of nutrients. With a lot of nutrients, there'll be a lot of fish. With a lot of fish, there'll be a lot of these seabirds. So that would be really advantageous if you time your trip properly. Second point over here is obviously use a comfortable boat with a roof and a toilet facility. We didn't do that, so don't do that mistake. You make sure whenever you're going, all these facilities are taken care of. Also check if the owner holds a proper license to operate. Get the necessary permissions from the Coast Guard or allied authorities. It'll be the best if you inform the local police station in the area, because I don't know how we can actually approach the Coast Guards in these smaller places. I don't think each and every shore has an office. So there'll be a lot of work to be done, a lot of planning to be done before that. Obviously, use proper navigation tools. You don't want to lose your way in the sea. And believe me, once you go in, everything, you just don't know where you turned, how you turned, nothing. It was when we went, it's all because of the fishermen that we had. We were able to understand where we are going. It was like completely lost in the sea world. Inform your friends, family about a trip. Obviously, keep a list of participants with them. Carry valid ID proofs. It is important. This particular point is really important for people from Mumbai and northern Mumbai region of Palghar and all. If you guys are planning trips from that area, you'll have to be slightly more careful, because sadly we don't have very friendly neighbors, and we keep watching these or seeing this news of fishermen straying, and entering what is not our territory or international territory of waters. Check if you have enough life jackets. Yes, that is important. One more point is carry enough food supplies and water. So this is important because when you're going for a pelagic trip, it's like almost a whole day affair. So I would recommend you go early in the morning and just come back straight in the evening. And you will have to carry enough water and food supplies for that, because going inside deeper seas is going to take time, and it will be very prudent to spend a whole day rather than just coming back in half day. So just with more time will be more time seeing the birds, and that will just result in more species. This carry medical kits, first aid kit, take measures to counter seasickness. So now this is the problem for people who experience seasickness. It's like almost a major problem. You will need a lot of courage if you suffer from seasickness to come for pelagic birding, and it will be really, really tough. Probably you have to sit with a bucket in the boat. Sleep well the previous night, and this is important, that you are rested well before you start your pelagic tour. And lastly, is the pelagic birds are tough to identify. As we just saw some identification challenges, it would be recommended to make notes, observe behavior, click as many pictures. We constantly have this skirmish between photographers and birders, which keeps happening, which is absolutely not required. This particular case, I would say that you need both kind of people. You need people to observe, and you need people to click a lot of pictures because birds just zoom past. Believe me, you need people with SLRs, and it will help in all the identification that happens. So let's just forget about this little skirmish and argument that we have. Keep it aside. For birding, both the things are really important. Yeah. So as we said, we have a coast of 7,500 kilometers, and we are evolving into this pelagic birding. Pelagic birding is really, really big, and it's a big industry abroad in some places like Australia, US. It's like a very set thing. But in India, we are coming, getting to that, just evolving or getting mature in this particular aspect. And there are regular pelagic trips that happen from Goa, Kerala, Mangalore, Chennai. And there are some tour operators. You can Google about them and you can join them. I think they conduct at least 2 to 3 pelagic trips every year. And if you're interested, you can obviously join these tours. And also you can plan on your own. A group can come together and we can plan something from the coast of Mumbai, from Vasai side, Alibag side. You can do that as well because otherwise you'll have to travel to all these places if you don't have the time. But these are more organized pelagic tours that we have, and it's good. Everything is like on a platter when you go with these people. Everything is set. All you have to do is just go. If you're planning on your own, we just had a set of points, and you'll have to work a lot before you embark on your journey. I hope you're not bored, and I think this is the last slide. And what I want to highlight over here is the continental shelf of India. So this map has been taken from Google satellite image, and along the coast of India, you can see a shade of sea which is lighter than, and on the left hand side it is, somewhere it is dark and somewhere it is light. So all along the border of India, you can see that the shade is lighter. Now this is what we call as the continental shelf. Okay, so this was actually a landmass during the glacial period, which is submerged now. And one thing that you will observe that near the area of Maharashtra, just the whole of Maharashtra, you will see that the continental shelf is a lot wider. So if you're going for these pelagic trips, reaching deeper seas will take longer time. So till the time the continental shelf is there, the sea is not as deep. And that is why you see this particular shade of blue close to the shore. As and now you go deep inside the sea, the salinity, the temperature of everything changes. The prey base changes, and obviously the birds that you will see will change. And that is why I feel all these trips from Goa, Mangalore, Kerala are more productive because you will see that the continental shelf is tapering and a lot less. And as you go to the south, on the eastern coast, it's even lesser. It's lesser than what we have in the western coast. So if you see Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, the continental shelf is a lot less. And one theory for that people say is all these rivers that we get in India flow from west to east. So most of these rivers that we have, like the Godavari, the Ganga, Yamuna, and all these rivers that they flow from west to east. And that is why in years that they have been flowing for like millions of years probably, and with them they got a lot of this sediment, and that actually has settled and probably reduced the continental shelf towards the east than what it is there in the west. I think that is it from my side. And just one second, let me check if one more slide is there. So I think that is it from my side. This is the last slide that I had, and I really thank you for listening to me patiently over here. Big thanks to Prathamesh and Words of Thane Raigad team. Special thanks to Adesh, Shashank, Saurabh, and Mandar, because because I took a lot of advice for them before I made this PPT. And obviously to Rujuta, because she's the one who has made this PPT. I'm not very computer savvy when it comes to all these things. So this PPT is totally possible because of her. And I thank you all to again listen to me patiently over here. And I think we'll end this presentation and take any questions if we have. I hope they're not many.
Thanks, Ava. Thanks.